Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we'll begin in Genesis chapter 30, verse 1. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." So Rachel, knowing that she's the one that is loved more, now she's jealous of her sister. She envies what her sister has. She envies the children she has. And basically says to Jacob, "Give me children, or else my life serves no purpose." And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So Jacob's angry, like, "Why are you asking me? I'm not God. God forms you in the womb. I don't have that power. All we can do is trust in him. All we do is do what we should do as married couples. Try to have children. I'm not the one withholding from you." So she said, once again, we get once again to another place of, because of envy, because of jealousy, because of an inability to wait on the timing of the Lord, we see people once again going forth and trying to do in their own power. So Rachel says, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." And I don't know if we talked about this with Sarah, but this idea of bearing a child on my knees is that after the woman had conceived, or in some cases, some people seem to believe the child being conceived on the wife's knees, almost as if she was the pillow, which is creepy in my mind, just because of, I did not live in that culture. But definitely that the child would be born. Basically, Bilhah, pregnant, would lay on the lap of Rachel as she gives birth. Therefore, the child would be transferred to her in a way. That's why she says that I may also have children by her. Then she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as wife, as concubine, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. And Rachel said, "God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son." So even she says, "Look, this is a blessing from the Lord, that this is now my child, and now I can compete with my sister Leah." Therefore she called his name Dan. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With great wrestling I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. So even in this way, you can see the sinfulness involved, even if they are still having children. Through this method, you can see that she's not doing it out of a way to be blessed with children as much as she's doing it as a competition with her sister. And this is, in a way, the sinfulness of their even father, of Laban, who, by sending Leah into the tent instead of Rachel, by deceiving Jacob, that he caused this hatred and this animosity between his own daughters, because he would rather enrich himself through the world than care for his own children. Not that he didn't love them in his own way, but this is a kind of a toxic form of love than it is a wholesome form of love. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. This man has got to be tired. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, "A troop comes." So she called his name Gad. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed." So she called his name Asher. So it is all just a competition to see who is being more blessed, almost in the eyes of Jacob, than it is God. See, Leah wanted more children so that she could be the one that is beloved in the eyes of Jacob. Rachel is jealous of Leah because of the children she's having, so she wants to be seen more blessed in the eyes of Jacob. This is what happens when you seek after the affirmation and after the approval of man instead of God. God is blessing them every step of the way. But even though they have praised God, their eyes are set on Jacob more than God through all of this. Now Reuben went in the days of the wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Mandrakes were herbs. They're medicinal. People thought they would help different ailments of women. Sometimes even help women conceive. It's all superstitiousness. I'm sure, you can mix mandrakes with something, but the idea of what they're talking about is more pagan superstition than any medicinal properties that may or may not be found in an actual mandrake. But she said to her, Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Remember, Leah although deceitfully, was Jacob's first wife. And she still is bitter and angry at the feelings he has for Rachel. So she's saying, why should I give you this? You want to steal from my son's hand after you took away from mine? And Rachel said, therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. So, in this very messed up, twisted, sordid affair that Jacob finds himself in, his wives are promising him and his services, so to speak, as bartering goods. That is how much this sisterly competition is degenerated into. When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. So she's like, look, I bought you, so come on home with me. And it is a weird, perverse thing that is happening. But in the way that God had promised, you would have all of these descendants. And this is how he's bringing them about. God knows the wickedness of our hearts. He doesn't just see it as we're doing it. He knows it because he's already seen it happen. God lives in the past, present, and future all at the same time. So God knows the wickedness for which we are actually going to commit in the future. In our future, not his future. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, God has given me my wages, because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, God has endowed me with good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. So they also have other daughters. It's not the only daughter. But this is the daughter that they name because Dinah is important to the rest of the narrative. It's kind of, it is what it is, but it does kind of not always sit well with us when we read it from our 20th century. Wait, no, we're in the 21st century, ain't we? Anyway, I'm old. But when we look at things from our own cultural aspect, and we look at things and we say, how come they only named this daughter? It's because this daughter has something bad. This daughter is going to suffer, and that's going to carry forth something else. And it sucks that that is the way it is. But we know Scripture doesn't downcast women. We know it inspires and raises up and treats women at an honored way in which that no other culture or religion had ever done to that point. So, although it's a slow dragging of the wickedness of man into where we needed to be, Scripture doesn't deal with unicorns and rainbows and pixie dust and changing humans from evil to good at the blink of an eye, because we have a will and we are stubborn. Humanity is that stubborn donkey, that stubborn mule that God has to just drag, creating just indentations through and hoof marks the entire way, because that's how stubborn we are. But once again, we see Leah trying to be more blessed and seeking after the love of Jacob, and just wanting that with all of her being, to be loved by her husband. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. So finally, God opens up Rachel's womb and gives her firstborn son, Joseph. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, send me away, that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know my service for which I have done for you. So he's saying, look, my family is growing. I promised you this amount of time. Let me leave. Stop dealing wicked with me in a way. He hasn't said that yet. But that's what he's getting to. Let me go back to my own country. And Laban said to him, please stay if I have found favor in your eyes. For if I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. And he said, name your wages and I will give it. So Laban, still trying, as if we remember he did back when Abraham's servant said, hey, Rebekah can marry Isaac, that's fine. But let her stay another 10 days. Let her stay a few days. Let her stay 10 at least. Always trying to get more out of somebody. Trying to milk more out of someone. To do whatever it can to enrich himself. So Jacob said to him, you know I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. For what you had before I came was little, and it has increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming, and now when shall I provide for my own house? So he's saying, look, we both know the Lord has blessed you because I've been here. But now it's time for me to go out and provide for my own house. When a man and a woman marry, they are to go and create a house of their own, to create a family of their own, to be their own unit. And Laban's not allowing this to happen. He's still keeping Jacob in a indentured servitude, so to speak. He's treating him as a servant, not quite as a slave, because he keeps having him being paid, but he's not allowing him the freedom to leave. So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. You will do this thing for me. I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages. So my righteousness will answer for me in time to come, when the subject of my wages comes before you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and the brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. So he's saying, fine, I want to provide for my own house. Let me take the impure ones, the ones that are considered less than. I'll take those ones that aren't wanted. I'll take that little amount as my wages. And that way, ours will be separated, and that way, if anyone, it is all perfect looking, that'll be seen as being stolen. And Laban said, "Oh, that it were according to your word." So he said, "Oh, that's a great deal. Of course. Of course you can take care of my flocks and all the ones that are coming out less than perfect. You can take, oh, that will work fine because there aren't that many born like that anyway. This works because then I'll keep being enriched through your work." So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hands of his sons. Then he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. So Laban, "Oh, this is great. This is amazing. Yeah, sure, do that." And then he went and removed all the ones Jacob had said, and sent them to his own sons, and had them take the flocks 3 days out so that Jacob wouldn't find them. That's how ridiculously deceitful this man was. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar, actually I don't know how to pronounce that, and the almond and chestnut, and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips of them, and exposed the white which was in the rods, and the rods which that he had peeled, and set them before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then Jacob separated the lambs, and made the flocks face toward the streaked, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves, and did not put them with Laban's flocks. So you can see, he goes through this process. Now, the process themselves, the rods, they are not causing the speckled and streaked and spottedness of the flocks. That is the Lord. This is just the process by which he's doing it. This is how he's separating them, and the Lord's allowing it so that way the Lord can bless him further. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in, so the feebler were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. So once again, we will see this later also when, I don't know when we'll ever get to the New Testament, but we'll see it in 2 Kings with Elisha. There's a man thrown on Elisha's bones after he dies, and he comes back to life. Does that mean Elisha's bones were enchanted? No. That's a miracle of God. We see in the book of Acts people stealing almost. That's the implication. They're stealing Paul's robes and his handkerchiefs, his headbands, because he was a tent maker and he'd be out in the sun sweating. We'd see people being healed by Peter's shadow. Are these icons? Is Peter's shadow magic? No, it's their faith. It's their faith in the Lord, in his promises that are making them well. The icons aren't doing it. It's the faith of the people. The icons are just something they were using, but it's not the icon that matters. When the centurion comes to Jesus, centurion even says, "I'm a Gentile, you can't come into my home. That would make you unclean. All you need to say is that my servant be well, and he'll be well, because you have authority, and I know what it's like to be under authority." We have denominations, we have different aspects of Christianity that believe that things can hold the power of God. Nothing holds the power of God. God holds the power of God. And how God chooses to use that is up to God. And that's it. Now, just because Jacob put out some rods doesn't mean the rods did anything. That's God and his provision working in the life of Jacob. Now, on to chapter 31. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, "Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what what was our father's, he has acquired all his wealth. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable towards him as before. So Laban agreed to all this, then tried to trick him, and he's seeing everything fail. Laban is seeing, because of this, all of his great, healthy, prosperous flocks become smaller and weaker and less prosperous, while Jacob, by taking the ones that shouldn't be desirable, become even wealthier and more prosperous. Then now Laban doesn't look on him favorably. That before Laban saw him as a tool to use to enrich himself, now he's seeing him as competition. Now he's starting to see and allow the jealousy of his own sons to get into his ear to turn him from Jacob. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers, into your family, and I will be with you. Now, Jacob wanted to leave, but Jacob in this way acted in the timing of God. He continued to do everything and wait for God. And now God is saying, now it is your time. Now is your time to return. I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field, to his flock, and said to them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not favorable toward me as before. But the God of my father has been with me, and you know that with all my might I have served your father. Yet your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not allow him to hurt me. So he calls his wives and says, look, your father is not just deceiving me now. He is now looking like he might try to harm me. God has not allowed it. But you've seen what I have done. You've seen how honorable I've been, how well I have dwelt with your father, and how poorly he has dwelt with me, or dealt with me. If he said, thus the speckled one shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore speckled. And if he said, thus the streaked shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked. So God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. So he's saying, see, the Lord has turned to me and is blessing me in this moment, and your father's not happy about it. And it happened at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked, speckled, and gray-spotted. Then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift your eyes now and see all the rams which leapt on all the rams which leapt on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray-spotted, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar, and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of this land, and return to the land of your family. See, the God of Bethel. Remember back, Jacob said, if you deal with me, and I do all that you commanded, and you stay with me, you will no longer be the God of my father and the God of my grandfather, but you will be my God. So God appeared to him and didn't say, I am the God of your father. He said, I am the God of Bethel, the one where you anointed that pillar and made a vow to me. I am your God now. In your eyes, I am to be your God, so that I can bless you. Now go out from this land and return to the land of your family. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. For all these riches which God has taken from our father are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. So Rachel and Leah, without the competition now, of one mind, is saying, what is even left in our father's house? God has taken from him, given to you. And what does he mean for us anyway? What does he mean to us? He sold us off to you to enrich himself. He sold us. He sold Leah for 7 years because he didn't want to find another suitor for her, because everyone was looking for Rachel because Rachel was more beautiful. And he wanted to make sure his older daughter had a husband, so he tricked Jacob into that. Then he sold Rachel for another 7 years. That was the importance of his daughters. Money, wealth. That's what his daughters meant to him. not what they meant to God. At every turn, his daughters meant more to God than they meant to him. Laban's daughters meant only as much as he could enrich himself by them. Through dowry, through service. But God saw Leah was unloved by Jacob, unloved by her father, and blessed her in abundance with 6 children. Rachel, because of the love and because of the competition, God withheld from her a little bit longer, but still provided for her in every step of the way. When we don't think we're loved, when we feel as though we're underappreciated, when we feel as though even those who should love us, even when our parents look like we are burdens and we feel we are burdens in their eyes, and even if we are, like Rachel and Leah, born to just crap parents, and we are born to parents who treat us in such a toxic fashion, we need to always remember that there is one who loves us in a way that that person cannot, will not, and never will. That God will bless us in abundance when we are his. When we are his children. Said, are we not considered strangers by him? Are we not considered strangers by him? What does he even mean to us? What do we mean to him? We're nothing. We were goods to be sold. But then we think back or look ahead. Isaiah 43:1. For I have called you by name. You are mine. That is what they hold. That is what we need to hold. See, when Laban considered his daughters to be a commodity, God said, don't worry, for I know your name. You are mine. Now, I know I'm misquoting that completely, but that is close enough for our purposes at the moment. He knows their name. He knows their heart. He knows who they are, what they deserve, and he knows the love he has for them. When we think no one else cares, there is one who does, and one whose opinion and whose love is far greater than anyone else's. And we need to make sure we understand that's where our blessing is. That our blessing is him. And whatever God has said to us, that is what we are to do. Now, thank you for joining me for another installment of Donning the Armor. Hope to see you again next time. But until then, be blessed.